So what's all this kerfuffle
Yeah.
about the
So
students'
I thought we'd get
money?
more people jumping on, but whatever. We'll get started here. So there's a lot of furor over the NCAA, the college athletic governing body, allowing athletes to receive money. Now, I was reading over the details, and they can't receive money for playing. So if you incentivize it somehow and say like, oh, if you score this many goals or do this, it can't be related to your sports performance or even participation. But you can have a third party collect money for you and pay you to do whatever, sponsor something, or so if you have their product, or and there's so much gray area there. And so now you can, athletes can receive money, and I guess individual states have passed legislation to allow this, but it doesn't matter. Even if your state doesn't have a legislation to allow it, the NCAA will still permit it. So and there has to be an accounting procedure around it. You have to report what you earn to the school, and obviously for tax purposes. And from what I understand, and a lot of people are now getting agents and people to help process all of this information. You're probably going to need an accountant if you're one of these upper level athletes. And there's no limit. I was trying to look for a limit, and there is no limit. So if somebody wanted to give you $100 million to play basketball or football, you can make $100 million, which I think is hilarious. So, obviously it's going to be more towards the high level, high whatever yield sports, the basketballs and the footballs. But I've even heard of a track athlete who had a lot of Instagram followers. So it seems to be very tied to social media too, to some degree. So if you have a following and a company or people think that you can help them with your name and likeness, then you can earn money. So it's all very interesting. And I think I was texting back and forth with Rob, and last year the top quarterback made the rookie quarterback Trevor Lawrence made $7 million, but now they're saying in college the top quarterback prospect should be able to pull in at least 8 million. So they're not even pros, and they're going to pull in more money than so they're trying to look at some positives of this, and one is, well, maybe they'll stay in college longer.
Oh yeah.
So it's gone a little crazy, a little haywire. And then I know that and Rob can corroborate this. I know that people I've talked to have said, well, we have kids at the school making just almost near $1 million, and they act like they're privileged. They don't have to do certain things. They don't want to work as hard because they're making great money right now. And even if they don't make the pros, or they're still going to be set. And so it's creating a lot of interesting dynamics.
They're making more money than their professors.
Oh, by far. I think they're probably making more before, but yeah, secretly. Yeah. But now it's out in the open public. You can, like I said, you can have an agent. You could have whatever promoters, managers, whatever you want to help get this money. And the money's not coming. Well, it's not coming directly from the university. It's coming from a third party. They call it collectives. So it could be boosters that create a collective, and they whatever money from whatever their money. I'm sure, I don't know if the school can funnel money to the boosters, but I'm sure that's illegal, but they'll find a way.
Yep. Wow. It sort of references to something called NIL or NIL. What's that stand for?
Name, image, and likeness. So a lot of this started because there was a case way back where a video game company used the name and an image of an athlete on a cover of a video game, a basketball player, and then they sued for that. So yeah, if you have a jersey, if you have a Mike Hurst jersey, and you're an amazing football player, and Mike Hurst is going to be drafted, if people buy that jersey, you can get proceeds from that.
Well, that sounds fair enough, actually.
Yeah, but it's certainly creating some ripple effects. Rob, what have you heard?
Yeah, listen, I've not investigated this as as deeply, I think, as you have, and probably some others that I'm not in the NCAA. I think it's fair, but I think there's got to be better control. My concern with everything that's going on is, let's just take a movie. Let's make a movie analogy. A lot of individuals, some who aren't named, will make a lot of money off a movie that's very successful. So, if you're going to pay a team 10 million or 8 million, whatever, to go to the Rose Bowl, the players were a participant in that movie, so to speak, to get to the Rose Bowl. And the NCAA tournament, like last year, the Cinderella team, St. Peter's, I think they made over $1 million. And there was this big article whether they should keep the money or put the money and distribute it equally through the conference. But the point is, they made over $1 million, and the players had something to do with that. My concern is, what's going to happen with college sports. I've spoken to some strength coaches and some other coaches that, they were told, don't work the players so hard, because if you make them upset, they may leave via the transfer portal. There's just a lot going on between the transfer portal, which may limit scholarships to high school athletes, because I'd rather have a player with experience and have them transfer versus, limit and reduce my high school scholarships. I think the players are entitled for their NIL. It just, how do you control it better? Does a player say, hey, Derek, I'm very happy with the University of Vancouver. I love you as my coach, but if I transfer to Southern Cal, I can make more money on my NIL, and things like that. So, you're going to lose players because you're working too hard, but yet in the game, you're going to tell them, don't play so hard. I mean, does it have effect on preparation? Does it have effect on, just, if you really want to know someone, in my experiences, give them power and/or money, and you'll see their true character. And so I just think that the players are entitled. As Mike said, that sounds fair. I think it is fair. You're going to use their name. You're going to, use their name, the NIL, and you're going to make a lot of money. They're entitled to something. They should get something. I'm in favor of that. But I think the controls aren't optimal right now. I don't. And it's not fair for the smaller schools. Like, I don't believe it's fair, and I could be wrong. If you're not in a Power 5 conference, but you're still a Division I level school, do you have the same opportunity? There's maybe, whether it's boosters or anything else. So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting. I think it has to be controlled better than it's been controlled.
Well, I mean, they have said on some level that it could level the playing field, because I think Deion Sanders at his school, which isn't a huge school, I think they got, one of their players got $1 million or something, and he was able to recruit them away from, the big schools. So, maybe there are resources within that, whatever town or community, for those smaller schools. And I think that's what Nick Saban was kind of railing on about, is that, well, this isn't equal if you don't have those resources. And everybody was like, well, you're one to talk. So it'll be interesting to see if, maybe these smaller schools can find some support and, maybe get some athletes, right?
But didn't Jacksonville, the head coach is Deion Sanders, didn't he deny that? Didn't he deny that the player got $1 million?
Yeah, I haven't seen his comments, but yeah, I think he was sort of opposing what was being alleged. But yeah, I don't know. I mean,
and the other the disadvantage is this. So let's say they get the player, and let's just assume, they say about assume that the $1 million story is correct. How many players can you get if you're at a small school? Right? How many millions of dollars can you get? 10 good players, or just the one, compared to, more premier teams that play in more premier conferences that probably have money to,
which works more for basketball and football.
A lot more players, right? So that, the playing field just isn't one player, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's it'll be very interesting to see where this goes. And you saw there's like a bit of a mass exodus to USC, with the quarterback from Oklahoma going, and then I think there was a receiver from, might have been Pitt.
Yes, Pitt.
Yeah, who went over. So he was the top prospect. So you know, I was talking to somebody who's at Washington State going, wow, you know, it's going to be a little interesting in the Pac-12, right? So, but yeah, it's certainly, I mean, it certainly makes it really interesting because, like you said, there's not these controls. So if at least in the NBA, there's a contract and there's, you know, there's guidelines around what you can do, but what if you bring somebody in, then he wants to leave the very next year and transfer out? Like, how do you tie him to that $1 million? Is there, you know, is this a 2-year contract? Is this a 3-year? You got to stay in school for 4 years to get it. I don't know if they can do that.
I assume once they have the money, it's theirs. But then again, that's an assumption.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was reading somewhere that you can't just give them cash. It has to, you know, they have to create some sort of, this is the service that you're getting or the good that you're getting from this money. So one of the questions was, can people just, like, you know, GoFundMe, you know, type things? And no, you can't do that. But I'm sure there's ways around it. Anybody else got any thoughts? Clint, is this going to affect NCAA hockey?
Well, yeah, well, it's an interesting topic. I don't know as much about this as you guys, and I'm not in, you know, sort of NCAA and football sports like you mentioned, where this will really impact a lot. But I just, it jogged my memory that basically Canadian major junior, I don't know how related this is exactly, but I thought it was interesting, this concept of, you know, paying athletes. So Canadian major junior hockey recently just went through a lawsuit. I was just checking up quickly some information on this because it was just in the last five or 6 years or so. So I'll share some information. So a group of players in the Canadian Hockey League. So if you know ice hockey, this is major junior. So this is the top level of junior hockey. So age 16 to 20.
And more players come from there than, say, college hockey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this is the main feeder for the National Hockey League. This is the top Canadian level. And it's always been an interesting topic because even back to when I was playing, you had to make a decision as a player. Were you going to go to try and play major junior hockey, which would make you as a professional, and therefore you lose your NCAA, your potential to earn an NCAA scholarship, because then you've been a professional, right? So you might be 16 years old. You might play one exhibition game and that would affect your NCAA eligibility. So this has been going on for, 30, 40 years, forever. So this, and then these players are now precluded from playing NCAA ice hockey. So the NCAA ice hockey players from Canada play a tier 2 junior A, not the elite level. Well, they're both elite level, but not the top major junior. So that's a brief explanation if you're not familiar with the hockey system. So anyways here, so it was 4,266 players. It was a class action lawsuit. And it looks like they were granted like $30 million, it seems like. So that was in 2014, a lawsuit was a $30 million settlement. So the players, I'm not totally briefed on this, but I think they were suing for minimum wage. They wanted minimum wage payment. They're like, look, we're playing hockey, we're filling up arenas. Some of them are in high school still. So I think they might have sued for minimum wage. And so I think it's an interesting, kind of concept, like should the players be getting paid, and so forth. So that's kind of my contribution from the Canadian hockey.
But
hockey
in major junior, so they don't get paid a salary, or they do. There's like a.
Yeah, I think so. The rumors were when I was, sort of playing, it was maybe like say $250 a week or something like that for major junior. So you were kind of getting like a stipend or an allowance or something like that. But when you're 16 years old, $250 is okay. But yeah, certainly like there was that sort of dynamic, like you said, because some of these teams will get thousands and thousands of fans, maybe some of the bigger arenas, maybe like 11,000 fans per game. So it's truly, and the courts did actually rule in another ruling that it was professional hockey. So even though it's junior hockey, age 16 to 20, officially it is a professional sport. So.
But was there anything, like, as far as with that league, were there people like, boosters in towns going, hey, if we put together 20,000, can we get this player to come here?
Oh yeah, I'm no doubt about it for sure, and especially if you're
Okay.
a top level player like a Connor McDavid or a Sidney Crosby. Oh, like I don't think there's any doubt about that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even lower levels. Yeah, even lower levels. Major, junior, junior A, junior B. It's not considered unethical. It's kind of allowed. Even junior B locally in Vancouver, there was players getting paid when I was playing and stuff. Guys getting paid pretty good. Actually, not bad. Yeah, for seasonal hockey when you're that age. So
yeah,
a few $1,000.
In Canada, the local maple syrup factory can scrape some money together to get some players.
Yeah, and they do that. Yeah, they do that in the senior A leagues as well. Some of the towns will have sponsors, businesses and stuff like that. So yeah, interesting topic though. I thought that was interesting. Anyways, yeah. So Canadian major junior has faced a similar issue, so I'm sure that's ongoing as well.
Well, I know I have friends in Canada who coach sports at university level, and they're kind of worried that this kind of thing will bleed over here, even though not to the same scale. But they're worried that, it's hard enough now with kids on social media and getting their attention and getting them to do stuff. So this is just yet another distraction, another thing that's going to, affect their, their control as a coach. So I find it very interesting. And, we've had this discussion before about just even pro athletes receiving so much money now. And, 30 years ago, people would work harder. They might not be making, tens of millions of dollars, but they're still working hard in the off season. Does getting paid influence your motivation? Does anybody want to talk about that? Like, as soon as you start getting paid a good amount of money, does it change things?
I'll say this, I think the players should get paid. I do, because they're part of the product that's bringing in revenue, right? They're a significant part of the product that's bringing negative revenue. But I think there's got to be a balance. Like when you have team ownership, and I don't know how it works with the NCAAs, but the institute, when you're taking the risks of laying out money, if you go out of business, the employees will go off to get another job, right? They're not in debt. They're not responsible for the loans that were taken, et cetera. So I think when you took the risks in a role of ownership, however you want to define ownership, private, institutional, whatever, there's nothing wrong with the capitalism and making money. And that said, I think you got to treat your employees, your players, whatever it is, you have to treat them fairly, salaries, opportunity to make extra money, benefits, those types of things. I think there has to be a fair value and a fair process across the board for both, quote unquote, whoever the owners are and whoever the players are. And I don't know if we have that balance right now with everything going on with transfer portal, NIL, and what else is this going to lead to? What people haven't brought up in a while, and I want to see what happens in the future, is Northwestern. Remember Northwestern? They won the right to unionize. And I don't know whatever happened with that, because obviously there are no unions in the NCAA yet with athletes, but they did win the right to unionize. So I don't know. I think that, again, I'm just repeating myself, but I'm not sure if the process is as optimally fair across the board that it could be. And it's, I think there's still work to be done to reach that level. But I think both sides, are entitled to make some kind of money. It should.
Well, should there be? I mean, if you have one player making $8 million, it's interesting. They call it, you form these collectives, because like collectivism was like distributing it amongst the group. So should there be something in place so that if somebody has the potential to make $8 million, does that get distributed to the team? Part of the team get that as well? Or does women's cross country get some money too? That's what I'm looking at right now, is what about these teams who don't have the same draw?
That's what happened at St. Peter's that I mentioned earlier. And I don't know how it finished up. St. Peter's, the discussion was, does the school get the money, or is that money distributed through the conference?
Yeah.
I don't know. And I'm thinking about this to answer your question before. I mean, you take a person, in business like Bezos with Amazon. He started in his garage, or Microsoft, Bill Gates, right? And look how big their companies grew to be, right? So they worked hard and continue to be financially successful. You look at somebody like Tom Brady, who's in sports, who, is reputably has a great work ethic. And look at his career, the records he set. Now he's got a record, so rumored a record-making broadcast contract. So hard work, some people, even though they get paid, keep working real hard. And I assume, other people, they start to make money, and maybe the motivation starts to weigh a little bit because they've achieved, the goal of making money. I think it comes down to the individual. I really do.
Do you think do you cap that? And the incentive is, the whole entrepreneurial American dream is like, you can make as much money as you want. And if you do it well, then you can keep making money. Is there a problem with that? Or do you think there should be a cap on how much they can make? Because that's the thing with, Elon Musk. All the jokes about Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are, they have so much money, they're trying to get off the planet, and spending money on rockets and this and that, when, it could be reinvested into other things.
In reality, is there a cap to how much money they should make? So should that happen at the college level? And I don't know. I don't know enough about the college level. I mean, should capping be the individual can't make more than X, or should capping be the individual athlete can make more than X, but they can only keep X and the rest is distributed to the athletic department? Or a percentage is distributed to athletic department and the other percentage is distributed to charities of their choice, or things like that. I don't think there should be a cap. I think everybody should have the ability to make as much money as they can. The question is, should you cap how much money they could keep, I guess, is what you're asking. And I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
Because if you go outside athletics or NCAA or anything, there's no cap in what an individual can make. So why should you cap them in a college setting?
Yeah. Mike, what's the most that somebody could make in Aussie rules football? What are some of the numbers that you hear about?
Oh, dear me. I have no idea what they make. I'm sure it would be over $1 million a season. But I know that in track and field, which is the one area that I have a bit of an idea about these days, I have one girl in my squad who gets $12,000 a year per university, and that's it. That's considered to be absolutely luxury, and it's 12 grand a year, and I bet she has to account for every cent of it.
Yeah, track and field is not the money-making sport, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike.
Sorry, Rob. Economies of scale. We just don't have the population base here. We don't get media coverage for track and field, even the biggest meets. Even what about swimming? Australia is, just one of the great swimming nations at the Olympics, and they just had the national championships. A couple of world records went, got no coverage at all. Got coverage on a subscriber channel,
like a streaming system.
You had to subscribe to it. It wasn't on free to air, and it should have been. And now no one saw it. I don't know what the ratings were, but I bet no one's talking about it. It's just not good. But there it is. So yeah, 12 grand for and you had to be an international to get that kind of money. It wasn't just for you ran good, you won the B grade 1500 for us. No, you had to be virtually Olympic status to get that much. Anyway, and then
I was just going to say, Derek, you can't forget the popularity and the revenue generated, right? So the people getting the big money with the NIL are people that whoever's supporting them, whether let's just say Nike or, Taco Bell, thinks that their name is going to sell their product. Now, I'm not trying to be disparaging here in any way. If you look at the television contracts of the NFL versus the television contracts, let's say, of the WNBA, I mean, you can't pay people money that's not there, right? And so if there's a great disparity in the revenues generated by the sport or the individual, that's going to dictate how much you can pay them as well, right? So it's not just, Mike's athlete who makes $12,000 a meet or whatever it is, maybe the greatest athlete in the world, but if the revenue's not there in sponsorship and television contracts, et cetera, she can't get paid or he can't get paid more than $12,000 because it's not there. So that's another factor.
Sure, Rob, 12,000 a year.
A year?
Not per a year, annually.
That's like gas money.
That's not something to write home about. And I'm not trying to be comparatively when you look at all sports. No.
Yeah, and you sort of think,
to be the greatest athlete in the world.
Power in sports. Well, there you go. In a nutshell, the mighty dollar.
Yes.
Yeah, because you could be the let's pick an event here. You could be the discus throwing champion of the world, or second place discus, which is a very difficult thing to do. But there's some guy on YouTube, doing stupid stuff with 3 million followers, making way more money. So life is definitely not fair.
No, I agree. And you get people like Sha'Carri Richardson, who's just bizarre, and is got people beating her door down to pay her money for her endorsement. My God.
Yeah, you just have to attract an audience, I guess. I mean, that's the whole thing now, is that it's not just about, how well you play, it's about your brand, I guess. And that's creating some interesting dynamics, and maybe you need to get a brand manager if you're an athlete. I don't know. I don't even know how it works, but I'm sure, there's agents telling you, you should be doing this, you should be doing that.
If you can attract an audience, you can sell, right? And if you can sell, then someone maybe would be willing to invest in you to sell their product.
Yep. Yeah, you just become a glorified billboard.
Well, I remember working with people in Hollywood, and I always thought, oh, they hate the paparazzi, and they don't, they're trying to avoid the photographers. And then I found out that a lot of them, the agent or whoever, somebody, the publicist, will call up the paparazzi and say, my client is going to be at the Walmart, or whatever. They'll be at this store at this time. And that's how it works, right? It's not that, these paparazzi are super, sleuthing experts and finding out where you are. They're being told where to go and where to take the pictures so that they get publicity. So that's how it works.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah, a couple thoughts on the NIL. So I know the NCAA right now, it seems like they're trying to just go hands off with everything.
Yep.
Recently, but we get a compliance email each week that just kind of goes over stuff that's going on in the NCAA. I'm going to pull it up. The NCAA met and released some general guidelines a couple of weeks ago on the NIL stuff, because they're kind of trying now to reel it back in some, it seems like. So, which is, I think is ridiculous, and I don't think it's ever going to happen. But the general guidelines, the summary was, so one, no booster involvement in recruiting, including collectives, which are considered boosters. And that's where you see, you've got 7 boosters that own a bunch of companies that they pull their money and then pay the athletes. I think Texas is one of the biggest schools with their collectives. I think every offensive lineman at Texas automatically gets paid $50,000. Second one was NIL agreements can't be based on enrollment decisions, athletic performance / achievements, or membership on a team. They are based on the value each individual brings to an NIL agreement. So I mean that right there almost voids the Texas thing, because it basically is, if you're an offensive lineman on the team, you get the money. You could be the starting, or you could be the bench one.
Maybe one requirement is they have to have a TikTok account too, and that qualifies,
yeah,
right?
Something to bring some publicity. And there's two more boosters, including collectives, may not communicate with potential student athletes or have recruiting conversations, which we know is happening. And then institutional staff cannot organize or arrange NIL meetings for PSAs or communicate on behalf of them with boosters. So that right there, those guidelines seem like they're trying to completely invalidate everything that they've already opened up, which I don't see happening. So I mean, the cat's already out of the bag. You're not getting it back in. Just seems kind of crazy to me. But I think you're talking, some of it about putting caps on how much people can make. I think didn't Saban say a few weeks ago, I thought, where I think they have a collective now, and they're trying to pay each athlete at least a base amount on Alabama's team. And then if a kid can go in and make more than that on their own, I think they can. But I think he was saying something, they're trying to get to where at least every athlete makes kind of essentially a base salary through the NIL, I thought. Did anyone else see anything on that?
No, that's interesting though. Do they get the Dickerson Gold Trans Am at the very least?
Yeah.
Hey, John, I have a question for you. Are you aware of whether it's part of the marketing department, or are they establishing a new NIL departments at schools to help guide and control this,
Oh, yeah.
so that violations don't occur? Like, what are the institutions doing?
Yeah, it depends on the institution. I know I've seen some articles where schools are putting up to $5 million allocated in their budget for this NIL stuff. And essentially, and they what I've seen, it's under the guise of NIL education for the athletes. Because like, as I said, the NCAA is saying, hey, the schools aren't supposed to have any role in any of this. But I think the schools are essentially saying, well, we're going to create, education channels for our athletes, as far as if it's help providing them with financial education or tax educate, agent, how to talk to agents. I don't know. And then I think too, I think they can provide essentially a phone book, I guess, for the athletes. So any athlete that's on their school, they can say, hey, here's all their contact information. Here's the sport they do. Here's how you reach out to them. And then they can just publish that. And then those collectives or those boosters have a way to get a hold of those athletes to open the lines of communication with them. But but now, according to what the NCAA is trying to change the guidelines now, it seems like that wouldn't even be legal, I guess. But
It's a
I mean,
mess.
you read a section that said it wouldn't be dependent upon their performance or athletics, but isn't that the criteria of why they're going to make the money?
yeah. Well, I think it's basically, you couldn't have a structure that says, hey, if you throw 5 touchdowns, you're going to get this amount, and if you throw 10 touchdowns, we're going to give you another 30,000 or whatever.
Yeah,
I think
or if you work out 20 hours a week in the off season, right? That too.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. So you can't really tie them to anything related to the team. That you can't, contract them, I guess.
Yeah, to the performance. It's just, hey, you're part of the team, so you're getting publicity, and we want to use your publicity to sell our product, essentially. But then that doesn't make sense, because then you would say, well, if you can't tie it to performance, why does the starting quarterback get paid more than the guy that's on the bench? Well, it's because his performance, he's getting more publicity. So
And it goes full circle, right? Because it's publicity, the school makes more money, and if the school makes more money, why shouldn't the athlete get a piece of that action?
Yeah. And then I've heard, just on how crazy it's getting, a couple of stories of where there's been some recruits that are now telling schools that they won't even come in for an official visit unless they, one story I heard was, it's a minimum of 100,000 to even get me to come in for a visit, which doesn't seem. I mean, that would not even be legal under the current guidelines. So that maybe that kid is just out of his mind. I don't know if that's a norm or if that kid's just doesn't have a clue about what's actually going on, or maybe that is actually going on now. I don't know. And then the other one I heard was a coach got a call from a kid's agent, and the agent was like, "Hey, why is my athlete third on the depth chart?" And the coach was essentially just like, "I don't know who you are. Lose my number. I don't care if you're his agent. He's third on the depth chart because he's not good enough to be first on the depth chart. And just because he's trying to get an NIL deal has nothing to do with who I'm playing." So it seems like even the agents are getting pretty brazen as well. So
So John, based on that, you think it is a possibility, not that this has happened or will happen, but is it a possibility that an agent will call a coach and say, my starting quarterback, my starting wide receiver, who's number one on your depth chart, is not making enough NIL money, and you better increase it, or he's transferring?
I don't know if they would call the coach because again, right now the coaches are technically not supposed to have anything to do with this. The schools
He would call the coach's burner phone, John. Come on.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and there was a case last month with a basketball player at, I think, Miami, and him and his agent put out a statement at the end of the basketball season that said, I don't feel like I'm getting a fair deal. I guess the collective at Miami was basically paying all the players anyway. They all had deals with the collective. And I guess it got out that an incoming freshman was going to end up making more through that deal than some of the current players. And so the player and his agent that were already at Miami said, either increase what I'm making or I'm hitting the transfer portal. Because I've been here for several years already. There's no reason an incoming freshman should be making more than me on this deal. And that opened a can of worms, and people were saying, well, that's not how it's supposed to work. Transfer portal is making this even more crazy. And then there was a quote from the CEO, I guess, of the collective or the company. And he said, you're being paid fairly. You're welcome to go somewhere else if you don't think so. And he said, we don't renegotiate. And I think the kid ended up staying, didn't enter the portal. So that shut him down.
But that's quite the confluence of things, the portal plus the NIL to create this madness.
Yeah. So yeah, it's getting crazy. I don't know where it's headed. I don't think the NCAA is going to be able to put any of this back in place, especially they opened it up so quickly. And then, like one of you mentioned, there's different state laws in place. There's really no NCAA guidance, so it's open, and I don't see it being reeled in any real way.
John, could you see the possibility down the road that these power institutions, I'm not even going to say the Power 5 conferences, but these power institutions just create their own conference and separate themselves from the NCAA because they're the ones with the money?
Yeah, I think that's been coming down the line for a while. People I've talked to, that seems to have been their viewpoint for the last 4 or 5 years, that whether it's the SEC or whoever else, they're just trying to get rid of the NCAA and break off and say, hey, we're our own thing at this point, and whatever schools they might pull into that. And with the NCAA, again, with them, that whole new kind of constitutional meeting they had back at the beginning of this year, where they are pretty much turning over most of the rules and enforcement stuff to conferences now. I think that makes that possibility even more likely.
President's retiring, right? Resign?
Yeah. Mark Emmert, he's stepping down at the end of next year as well.
You think this had anything to do with it?
Who knows? Probably.
He wants to get away. He wants to get away from the dumpster fire. Like, yeah, it's funny because I was watching episodes of Better Call Saul and how he was making a career out of selling burner phones to drug dealers, and I'm like, well, there's an NIL burner phone opportunity here. Yeah, it's gonna get way out of hand, and you can't go back, right?
But going forward, you have to be able to put in some type of control. Be able to, the tail can't wag the dog. though, the TAL, quote unquote, is entitled to, and I feel bad for the high school kids, because the high school kids that are making money are the outliers, right? What about the good, hardworking high school kid that would have gotten a college scholarship prior to, the institution of the transfer portal, and they want to go to a particular school and they're all set to go, and coaches decided I'd rather take a experienced sophomore C of X versus another high school kid on scholarship. So I think there's, the snowball's going downhill.
But do these offers extend to like the grade 10 student who, maybe the collective is like eyeing people that are potential recruits? Are they starting to funnel money before they even, make it to their final year, their senior year?
Yeah, but that's been going on for a while, right? You've read in the past, it's not literally cash, but you've read in the past an 8th grader was offered a scholarship at the University of X, right? Or whatever. So some remnants of that has been going on,
Well, that was the whole deal a couple years ago with the AAU leagues, right? And some of those coaches getting in trouble with the AAU people funneling players to certain AAU leagues that are certain apparel brands with basically the belief that, hey, that kid's going to go to a school that has that apparel brand. So that was going on behind the scenes already.
Yeah, that brings up the whole point of like, okay, well, what is Nike, what is Under Armour doing, and from the NIL point of view? Are they coming up with a strategy around, getting these players on certain teams or manipulating the situation and sending money like that? I haven't even looked into that.
Yeah, that's what surprised me. I haven't seen a whole lot of deals that have been published or come out that are from these big companies. It's all been the collectives from boosters, essentially. I haven't actually seen a whole lot of deals that, hey, so-and-so quarterback signed with Nike or Adidas. Maybe that's happening. I just haven't seen it. But I feel like a lot of this has just been more of the boosters that are stepping up and making these collectives is where they're getting the money from.
Do the collectives get anything except the athlete going to their school and they win? It helps them win. Do the collectives get a financial reward or anything?
I mean, I think there's like the Texas O-line one. There were some stipulations on what the athletes, the athletes had to, because they're technically employees, I guess, of that collective. There were some rules surrounding what they had to do, whether it was like appearances, or I think they had to do so many hours of some community service with some place. But I don't know if they're actually getting any real return, because again, I don't know if with these collectives, I don't know if it's actual companies, right? Like it's not like they had whatever company in place and now the players are spokespeople for it. It seems to me like these companies are just being created out of thin air. I don't know if they're even actually companies. I don't know I don't even know what a collective actually is. So I don't know if the players are actually doing really anything and actually getting a return, or if it's just, we want our school to have the best players and we're going to pay the players, pay them to get here.
And is there extreme transparency so that you can go look up who the collective is, who's involved, how much money each athlete's getting now? That would be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the next few years. I'm watching, and like Rob, you were talking about the Manning kid. What is he going to make?
Yeah, we were speaking yesterday when Derek said to me that he heard a quarterback was getting $8 million. I'm like, what is Arch Manning going to get? It's listen, if he can get it, God bless him. But I just think, again, what are the controls though? Arch Manning can get $100 million. God bless Arch Manning. He worked hard. He's a pedigree with genetically and everything else that comes with it. So God bless him. Let him make his money. But how do you control this across the board? That's what I'd like to know, so that there's not such significant advantages.
Well, hopefully Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos start a collective. Any other final thoughts? I know I want to let you guys go, and thanks for joining. But any other final thoughts on this and where it's going to go? John, sorry.
I was going to say my biggest, I guess, future concern would, like what we talked about, if these bigger conferences break away, what happens to the mid majors and the smaller schools? Because I mean, they're staying afloat somewhat through all the NCAA revenue sharing. the revenue that comes off the NCAA tournament and from football and the conferences and stuff. And if these big ones break away, what happens to all the little schools? Do they just go bankrupt and have to cut a bunch of sports? That's my bigger fear, is what happens to some of these smaller schools and the revenue shares if those conferences break away and the revenue sharing dries up.
Trickle down. I'm curious about it. Like, when and where does it happen? All of a sudden you'll have coaches who have been coaching for who knows how long, and now some 18-year-old walks on campus making how much more times their salary than they do. So when and where do we see trickle down go further than just players, and does it even happen? If it does, how does that happen? How does that affect it? I'd say support staff. We're in an industry that's seemingly never stopping to grow from a financial standpoint, multi-billion-dollar industry. And when does the trickle down go further than just the athletes? Obviously it is athlete centered, as it should be, but what happens there? How does it happen? Does it even happen? Should it happen? So it's curious to see.
Yeah, but Sam, that's already happening. That's what I go back to my concern, and I agree with what John said. That's part of my concern. What happens to everybody else? But in the NFL or in the NBA or Major League Baseball, all the players are making more money than a lot of the players are making more money than their coaches and their GMs, right? But they can't just say, I don't like it here. I don't like the way you're treating me, so I'm just going to leave this team and go work for this team, right? There's a control method, whether it's through training or not signing them or free agents. There's a control in regards to how to handle the situation of people making a tremendous amount of money. So I don't think that the opportunity to make money, the big limiting factor is. I just think that right now at the college level, it's not as structured as it could be to prevent a lot of this stuff from happening, and yet still have people make money, not worry about the small schools going out of business, so to speak.
Yeah, and I don't know what the mechanics are of, okay, we're going to pay you $1 million. Is that a certain amount every month? Installments? Is that we just transfer the money right away? Because what happens when the athlete gets injured in week 1? Where does their investment go, right? Or do they stop transferring money? All right. Thank you very much for joining. I've learned a lot, but it'll just get more entertaining, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, it's definitely the haves and the have-nots now.
I was going to say, you really wonder whether it's going to cleave a few teams down the middle.
Yep.
The have-nots.
Like John said, there's going to be repercussions, and hey, we're making all this money, we don't need you. We're going to cut you guys off. So awesome. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, Monday, Mike, for you, and good catching up.